Welcome, everybody. Thanks for your patience. Tonight's session of Justin's Room, Our Stories to Tell, is going to feature Alan Holdsworth. I did say that correctly. Talking about Bob Kafka and ADAPT. Justin's Room happens every third Wednesday of the month at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On the screen is a line drawing of Justin wearing his signature hat. His glasses are down on his nose. He has the bolo tie, an outline, and the illustration was done by Teddy based on a photo by Tom Olin. Info on future and past events, registration, playlist, and donation opportunity is available at bit.ly/Justin's-Room. You can register for future events at bit.ly/register-Justin. We have a QR code on the screen, and there also is information about co-sponsoring by Disability History and Culture Collective and the I Love You Lead On community. Next slide. Justin's Room, Our Stories to Tell, every third Wednesday of the month at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Justin Dart and his wife Yoshiko took road trips multiple times across the country, sitting with disabled people in every state to hear their challenges, successes, and hopes. They brought these powerful stories to Congress, helping to turn shared dreams into the Americans with Disabilities Act. Bring your words, your poems, your art, your dance, your music or video, whatever feels right for you. And not for Alan, but for our other guests, if you'd like to speak about 8 minutes, if you want to share. Let us know ahead of time or just come and join the Zoom. And for those of you that are in the room tonight, please share this with your friends. The mic will stay open as long as folks have something to say. Every story is welcome. Email leadon@iloveyou-leadon.com with any questions. Info on future and past events, again, registration, playlist, and donation opportunity is available at bit.ly/Justin's-Room. Next slide. Tonight, we have March 18th. It is March 18th, 2026. Stories about Bob Kafka and ADAPT with our featured speaker, Alan Holdsworth. Again, information on the future and past events, registration, playlist, all of that is at bit.ly/Justin's-Room. Registration is at bit.ly/register-Justin. We'll put those in the chat. Next slide. Contact us for help or accessibility requests. If you need help accessing the event or want to request a voice option during the presentation, email us at leadon@iloveyou-leadon.com. Next slide. Zoom etiquette and access. During the presentation, all Zoom attendees will be muted to support access and reduce background noise. If you need to use voice to communicate during the presentation, email us and we'll arrange a separate voice space just for that. After the presentation ends, we'll open up mics for conversation, unrecorded, one voice at a time as usual. Chat comments will be read aloud to provide access. If you don't want the chat read aloud, use our private message to one of the hosts. Next slide. Accessibility info. ASL is provided for the presentation and will be spotlighted. Auto captions are available and can be viewed on screen or as a transcript. In the Zoom toolbar, there is a CC option. If it is not there, click the 3 dots for more options and locate it there. The ability to show, hide, or adjust captions is there, as well as the option to view captions as a transcript. Next slide. A note about our ASL interpreter. In keeping with I Love You Lead On and DHACC's goal of making conversations about disability available and accessible to all, we invite our ASL interpreter to participate fully, asking questions and joining the discussion if and when they have them. Next slide. Justin's Room sessions are recorded. All Justin's Room sessions are recorded and will be available on our playlist within a few days with corrected captions and transcripts. You can find the playlist on the Justin's Room website at bit.ly/Justin's-room. There's a QR code. Help make this space accessible. I Love You Lead On Community and all of its various projects are volunteer-led. We have a variety of ways you can support our efforts to provide full access. Our work includes the Disability History and Culture Collective, DHACC, This Space, Deva's Room, Judy's Room, Justin's Room, and other events on the horizon. Donate at iloveyou-leadon.com/donate. Next slide. Join our email group, please. Disability History and Culture Collective, DHACC, has 2 Google groups for disability-related conversations. DHACC Disability Museum, focused on museums, exhibits, and collections. Those could be formal, informal, or in progress. And Disability Advocates-Lead On, for general disability community discussions, events, resources, and current issues. You may choose one or both, depending on your interests. For instructions and more information, visit https://bit.ly/DHACC-Google Groups. Next slide. For updated information, schedule, and registration details, visit www.iloveyou-leadon.com/Justin or bit.ly/Justin's-room. Past episodes will soon be available at the playlist on YouTube, bit.ly/Justin's-room playlist. Share your feedback about this event at https://bit.ly/DHACC event feedback. And we would love to hear from you about this particular event or any events you attended with us. Next slide. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Susan, and let Susan introduce Alan and talk a little bit about how the Justin's Room events go forward. Take it away, Susan.
Oh, sorry about that. So Sharon, your relationship with him is much more contemporary than mine is. I know him as Johnny from old days, and when my car had a cassette in the player, I always played his music. My son grew up hearing and singing his music. But why don't you talk about the work he's doing now?
Hi, everyone. This is Sharon. I'm mostly on the tech side, and I've got people in the background. So I wasn't planning on speaking, but I work with Alan. I'm delighted to have a chance to tell you a little bit about him and how I got to know him. Alan is the founder of Disability Equality and Education. I'm going to say about 10 years ago, because I'm sure the idea was percolating before he applied for the grant that funded D, which is what we affectionately call it. He recognized that there was the stigma surrounding disability in education existed in part because we don't talk about disability in schools, and when we do, it's only from a really problematic lens or on like a once a year kind of a thing. And so he founded Disability Equality and Education to address that, that need. And I started working with him maybe 7 or 8 years ago as a cheerleader, and now I work alongside him, and I'm honored to do so. And I'm going to, introduce him now to talk about his friend Bob Kafka and a little bit about ADAPT as well, because he has lots and lots of stories about both. He said he could go on for 3 hours if we let him. So Alan, Johnny.
Thank you so much, Sharon, and everyone. It's good to be here amongst old friends and you. Um, I have to start back in England because if I hadn't been doing what I did in England, I wouldn't be here right today talking to you. So um, back in 1984, I worked with 7 people with intellectual disabilities, as you would call them. Uh, and they were all either at home or in a hospital. And I listened, basically. And I listened to them. I made lots of mistakes in the first place, just taking them to bars and ordering Chinese, Chinese food or whatever. But eventually, the question was to the parents, which was, well, what happens when you die? What's the next step? And they didn't have an answer, and that was their biggest fear. So for the next 3 years, we founded the first independent living project in Britain, which is going to help people with intellectual disabilities move out of home. But at the same time, ever since I was 16, which is a very long time ago now, I was playing music or writing music or writing songs and stuff. And so by the time we got to where I'm talking now is about 1980, 84, 87, I'd already wrote a couple of songs around disability, all poems. One was called Where'd You Get That Leg? Which was all about that stupid question people ask you all the time. So it was like a little pastiche cut. I think you call it a cut. And the other one was about a charity which was horrible, called The Taxi Driver's Tweet. And I'd also wrote my first poem, identifying myself really as part of the disability community. And that song was called I Love My Body, because it was like, up to that point, I tried to pass. I think Judy Newman came over to England once and she talked about passing, And I think a lot of us at that time were trying to just pass and be not able-bodied, but, think in the mindset that they were, able-bodied. So when I used to walk past the shop window where I could see myself limping with my caliper on, then I suddenly got this reality that I'm not like those guys, and but that group of 8 people with intellectual disability really helped me to begin to identify with that book. The other thing was the music, and I started to write, by that, shortly after that, I met some really great activists, some of the leaders in England and Britain, basically. And what happened was, because they discovered me as well, I got to go around all the places in England. So if a disability organisation had an AGM, they'd book me to play and perform. And from that, I could talk to the folks and, get a kind of picture about what it was about. Anyway, I don't want to talk too much about the UK, but basically what happened eventually was we had a big demonstration. And I'd always been an organizer. I'd always been a community organizer ever since I was 16. So that wasn't anything new. But when we started to think about the telethon in England, we did one in 1990 and we did one in 1992. And the 1992 one, we had 2,000 people outside the TV studio. A little bit like Jerry's Orphans thing, But we had 2,000. We had 30,000 people out there, and it was wonderful. And that's when I came to the notice of ADAPT. That's how it kind of began. And what happened was I was going on holiday with my ex-partner Barbara to Greece, basically, for a nice 2-week holiday on the Saturday. And that meant that I was going to miss this conference where these 2 Americans were coming over called Mike Oberger and Bob Johnson were coming over to do a presentation at the conference, right? And I couldn't make it because my flight was booked. So Jane Campbell, who's now a baroness, said, you've got to come over to, meet these guys before you go. And I wrote a paper on, if it's about civil rights, you have to behave like civil rights. the suffragettes did direct action. Black and ethnic minorities did direct action. Why is disabled people not doing direct action, basically? Otherwise, well, it was just a talking shop for me. I was really into that kind of thing. So I wrote a paper and said, can you circulate this at the big AGM? This was the British Council of Organisations of Disabled People. So I go down to Jane's House, which is about a 2-hour drive. It's across London. If you know London, it takes 2 hours to get from like the northeast to the southwest, and that's how it was. But I went there and said, I'll stay for an hour. I met Mike and Babs. I gave him a couple of my cassettes. Me and Babs used to smoke, so we'd go outside and have a smoke and get to know each other. And that was it, really, basically. I went home and that was it. And then when I got back from holiday, there was a letter there inviting me to San Francisco to the next National Adapt Action in 1992. And that's where I began to meet Bob and Steph and other folks. The person who picked me up at the airport was a young guy who looked like Jesus, called Tom Owen, basically. So just to sort of get you into this. We were there really to share and observe. Basically, that was not, we weren't there as like, blah, blah, blah. They wanted me to perform, which I did. And after we did the Adapt Action, I went to Denver and then I went to Texas and did a little tour performing, for different chapters. And obviously in Texas, that's where I got to know Bob and Steph. But I remember the San Francisco one. I just remember there was 5 people in the room apart from me. It was Bob and Steph, Bob Kafka, Stephanie Thomas, Mike Oberger, Babs, and a guy called, Wade Blank, 6, and Shell Trapp, right? Shell Trapp was a community organizer from Chicago. He was working on housing with poor people, but he was the mentor in those days for like, what's the next step and what we should do. Shell didn't charge anything for that, but he'd insist on 3 bottles of vodka and about 800 cigarettes, basically. So, but he was an absolute gem in terms of community organizing. I think they learned. So that we used to sit in that room, and I would just sit back and observe. I wasn't going in there, telling them what they should do, for God's sake. But I would just listen to what they were doing. And shortly after that, after the Telecom, we tried to organize a sort of national network of activists who were prepared to do, non-violent direct action. And that's how Dan came about. And through Mike and Babs and Bob and Steph talking to us, either on the phone or when they came over afterwards, they said, just keep it simple. Keep it simple. It's your first big national campaign. Make it about public transport. We just won that. So in 1992, we were on the DDA at that time. We were on accessible public transport, and we just took a lot of lessons from Bob and Mike and Steph and so whatever, and that's what we did. Of course, other groups in England were doing things like the DDA, Disability Discrimination Act, and we helped them. We weren't kind of rent a mob, but we would go out and do that. But the other thing that I really kind of noticed in America when I first came was, there was about 500 people, by the way, in San Francisco. And they were all bloody different, right? I was occupying doorways with people who like guns. I hate guns. Right, it didn't matter. We were both in the same doorway. Right, they were sexist, they were racist. Right, there was people, and not because they were educated and then became like that. They just were not educated enough to, or hadn't got that into their heads, that kind of stuff. But it was also, black people like Anita was there. Anita Cameron was there, and we hung out. And because she's sang, me and her would sometimes go around the troops to keep the troops going and get them to sing along with things. So yeah, me and Nene were a pretty good double act for many, many years. One of the people we met, and you probably know him from history, is Wade Blank. So the first story I want to tell you is one of those from Wade. And we were coming back from San Francisco. Oh, I didn't even tell you, sorry. The last story of Bobby, right, because we supposed to go for Bobby, is we're in the Democratic Party headquarters in San Francisco. Right, there was one group in the Democrats, one group in the Republican Party headquarters. Don't ask me what it was about. We were just observing, kind of thing. So we're in there, and everybody storms in. Bob's leading the group, but he's like behind. He's kind of making sure people are okay. So this group gets to the front of the doors, and the Democrats come out with a bunch of cookies. Right, a bunch of saying, "Hey, welcome, have some cookies." And some of the front guys, kind of, regular adapt folks start to take the cookies, and from the back, Bob's going, "No more fucking cookies, no cookies." Right? We haven't had a meeting yet. We don't know what they're going to give us. Right? Think about it. Right? Why would you accept a cookie? And so you had a discussion about whether they support you or not. I mean, it's kind of so obvious, but that became one of Bob's one-liners, basically, right? I mean, Jim's laughing because he knows what I'm talking about. Yeah, so Bob is no more fucking cookies to me. And it's a really good lesson, right? Because Bob didn't usually, lead from the front. I don't like the word leader anyway. I like the word organizer. And for me, Bob was always an organizer, right? If he had to lead, yeah, he'd do it. I mean, Mike Kohlberger was more of an organizer. He hated leadership. He hated people, right? But then you have people like Babs and Steph behind them, their partners, who were doing what I call the front and the back. So, Babs would go and get the McDonald's hamburgers, make sure people are okay. If people fell ill, she'd take them to hospital, and so on and so on. So there was all those kind of, there were different roles when you're trying to, organize a community. So on the way back from San Francisco towards Denver, I won't go into the caravan, but Wade insisted on having a caravan of wheelchair accessible buses, which were from Atlantis. And there was probably like 15 of them. And none of them, Wade led the group at 60 miles an hour, and all the young people driving the bus going, "Oh, there we go fast, we could get home, And then when they got to Colorado, he said, "Yeah, you can go now, you know where you're going." But before that, we stopped in, I think it must have been Nevada, a casino, which is because actually it was really cheap. Wade found a really cheap place. The breakfast was $1, and you actually got $10 worth of chips. So everyone loved it. It was a great place to stay, But anyway, I woke up early in the morning at 6 o'clock, and me and Wade had breakfast together. And he told me the story of the mule. So I just like to tell you that because it's one of those things I always talk about in stuff. But so if you've heard it before, I'm sorry. But if you haven't, it's a great story. And the story goes like this. This guy wanted to sell a mule. All right? And this other guy says, "I want to buy it." So the guy who wants to buy the mule says to the guy who's selling it, "What's it like? What's the mule like?" He says, "Oh, it's great, work hard, still pretty young, it's good. How much do you want for it?" He said, "But what you have to do is treat it nice, right? If you don't treat it nice, it gets all kind of weird, So he said, "How much?" $100. So the guy buys the mule for $100, takes it home and puts it in a nice stable with lots of straw, gives it an apple and carrot every day and all that, makes sure it's groomed and brushed right for a whole week. And on the Friday, he said, "Okay, let's go." So he saddles up the mule and he gets on the mule, and the mule doesn't do nothing. He stands there doing absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing, right? And this guy who's just paid $100 thinks, "I gotta go and see the guy, I had to get him to take it back or get my money back or something, right? So the guy goes by and says, well, he said, look, my meal's not going, he's not doing it, he just stands there. Well, what am I going to do, He said, let me come back with you. He said, all right, you come back with me. So the owner, the previous owner comes back, right? And he gets on the mule and takes out a whip and smacks the mule on the butt. And off the mule goes and starts working. And the guy who bought it goes, but I thought you told me to treat it right. He said, yeah, but first you got to get his attention. And I think that is like the whole kind of way that Adapt does it. It adapts, and that's how it's supposed to work. There's no point in talking about it sometimes on little social media sites. You have to grab attention, and that's really hard to do. And we're not all kind of publicists or media moguls or whatever. So somehow, if you want to get something done, you at least have to get some kind of attention. It was a great lesson. I went back with that and saw, yeah, I'm doing the right thing. And then the other thing is, so we go to Denver and we go to Texas. I think we went to Atlanta and Mark Johnson's as well, I think. That trip, performing and just talking. But I think over the years with Adapt, they came out with a brilliant T-shirt, but I think it was Oberg rather than Bob who came out with it, which was The Many Shades of Strange. And that's who we are. We are the many shades of strange, And if I wouldn't say if you're a leader, but if you're an organizer, and my departed wife would say this, it's about listening. It's about relating, It's about not thinking, oh my God, that person's a judge or that person's this or the head of this and the head of that. This person is an activist. And you need to listen to that person, right? And whether you agree and disagree on everything, there's things you agree on. And that's why you're there. In fact, that's why you're in the damn room. Basically, if they're in your community, if they're on your side. And from that conversation you have, and from listening yourself, you can change each other, basically, I think. Listening is not a one-way thing, right? And having a relationship isn't just you telling people what to do. It's also about them telling you what to do too. And you come to some kind of compromise. Going back to Bobby, okay, so we met Bob and Steph, and you have to say Bob and Steph, just like I know they had to say Mike and Babs. They were not individuals, they were a team. They were an absolute team. And I was down at Bob's memorial, and, it felt weird not to have Bob there with Steph. It really did. But we've talked since, and we both lost our partners in the last year or two, so we kind of have that thing in common a little bit. So as well as Bob being what I would call a people person, right? I mean, I'm not the right person to talk about this, because you need to talk to people in Texas, who work with Bob on a day-to-day basis. But they would tell you, I think, that Bob was certainly a people person, right? He might have a kind of laconic sense of humor. I would talk about it, right? So sometimes he'd say something which was like outrageous, for instance. I don't know what to say this in Justin's room, but I remember once, I will talk about this story. We were at the HSS in DC, and I mean, some of you have been there, and anyway, on one side of the HSS is a car park with a ramp and a barrier, basically. So the employees can go in, to the car park and at night come out. And so there was me and Justin and a few other folks, getting out, I was actually handcuffed to Justin's wheelchair, right? And we were going to get arrested. This is like going to be Justin Dart is going to get arrested. My God, it's like, what do we do? And I'm not thinking like that, but I know Bob is going, what's going to go up? And in the end, they took him off, right? He said, Justin, you got to come out, right? I think I got arrested, but yeah, Justin was pulled out by Bobby and stuff. But afterwards in the bar, Bob imagined what would happen if Justin had died in jail that night, like Martin Luther King. It was like kind of like, that would be a hell of a story, but that was Bob's kind of laconic and gallows sense of humor, if you like. Of course, we all love Justin, and it wasn't going to happen, but it's like you saw opportunities, if you like. So, but apart from what people person, I mean, other people like Jim would probably say, Bob was the ultimate polyglot. A remarkable combination. Just talk to anybody and, organize and, whatever, but also have that brain which talks about what demands you need to have. And I just remember, Bob was very, very clear on what ADAPT's demand should be. I think it was even more clear than Oberger and other folks. He really knew that system, and I think his biggest achievement was Money Follows the Person, which was a policy that we got enacted through bloody Gingrich, for God's sake, right? Which said that the money that's spent of you being in an institution is transferable to living in the community. And that policy, even though, we still have people in this news, that is probably released, tens and tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of disabled people out of institutions. So if you want one piece of legislation, that would be the one that I would pick out. And I was there when Bob was in with Newt Gingrich and a few other DAP leaders talking about, hammering it out, basically. We were outside on the Hall Street in DC, and we're there all night, pretty much all night, This was one of those camp out things.
Yeah.
So did somebody say something? Sorry. Susan? Somebody? Okay. The Hall Street is like a place where I think it's the Congress, I think it is, right? And I think there's a big grassy thing that looks like a horseshoe. So I'm not very good at the names of the streets. But yeah, that was really big. And then there's a couple more things, I'll stop. I'm looking at, oh my God, I should stop anyway. One of the times me and Bob and Steph came to England and did some training and we did some work and we also drove around, and that was like a good 2 weeks of, really getting to know Bob. And then the other thing that I really remember Bob for is, without going into names, there were splits in ADAPT. There were splits, right? Mike and Babs fell out. Right, that was a split. Wade died, that was a big thing, But Bob and Steph, in particular, were the constants, right? They were always a couple. It was always Bob and Steph, and so and then there was other splits later on, which we won't go into. But Bob and Steph were the glue, if you like. They were the ones who just, I wasn't. I was watching it, to be honest with you. And that's it. And I think the last thing I'll talk about is my stag night. And my stag night was me and Cassie were going to get married at ADAPT. And it was in Columbus, Ohio, and it was damn snowing. So we're outside the federal building in Columbus, and we want to occupy it. So we have people who are going to open the doors. So they open the doors, and me and Bob are at the front, and we get in. And then the doors close. So it's just me and Bobby in this federal building being arrested, and I'm getting married the next day. getting married at Adapt the next day. So I don't know what happened, but they finally did get us out, but I had no chance to go and do any shopping or anything like that or whatever. But I just remember like the only person I had on my stag night was Bobby. So that's a really good thing. When it came to America, I'd already kind of lost my appetite for kind of taking all the crap that I got in England. So Bobby was really good at giving me a job which I could live with, which was about organising theatre, a street theatre for Adapt. And that was like, I was very happy not to get any other leadership role or whatever. I really enjoyed working with Bobby on the theatre. And I think there is still on my Facebook page. One of the theatre ones which didn't go quite as well as it should, where Bobby's covered in red paint, basically, because we do a really dramatic thing. I'll stop there because you haven't got long unless you want to talk and ask questions. Sorry, but I love Bobby. Yeah, Bobby is. Yeah, I'm missing him. Oh, I'm still missing. Okay, open it up.
So we got any questions people want to ask or people want to put in their own comments? We've got a couple people who tried to get in.
Okay.
I'm not sure what the problem is, but
This is Jim Ward. I just wanted to,
Jim, how about you?
yeah, Alan, thank you. And thank you all for being here and putting this together. And Alan, it's good to see you again. And I was grateful to be able to make it to Bob's memorial service. And I went to honor him. I didn't realize how much I would get out of it in terms of being around our colleagues, being together, and to being in that historic office too, the ADAPT office there in Texas. I was fortunate. So I met Bob a little over a quarter century ago, and I was lucky enough to be in the national or the capital area ADAPT in DC. And we had some great, Marjorie Rifkin and Tom Olin was part of that, Janine Bertram Kemp. And you kept talking about Bobby, and of course we're talking about Bobby Kafka, but it also makes me think of Bobby Coward. And
Oh yeah.
Bobby Coward and I really struck up a good, deep friendship. And like he did with everybody, he just had that way. And he passed way too early. But I met Bob through ADAPT, of course, and I was director of public policy at the time at what was then NAPIS and now is NDRN, the National Disability Rights Network. And I had just come from, I was executive director of the Vermont Democratic Party. I was an elected official, and I was pretty square. I had a suit and tie and looked like a used car salesman, I think, when I first got to Washington. And Bob got me out of the suit and tie and into a t-shirt, an ADAPT t-shirt, and that led to the handcuffs, of course. And one of the things I regret, getting arrested in DC is like theater. It's changed now. It's gotten more severe, but they used to, arrest us and release us right away. And so I never went to go to the holding tank, and because that's where a lot of the bonding happened for people in ADAPT is to go in together, and I miss that part. But what I want to say is what really moved me is Bob advocating for the pitchfork model, and the pitchfork model is, if you picture the prongs of a pitchfork, they are united, they are together as one. And the different prongs of the pitchfork represent the media, represent lobbying, represent direct action, and so forth. And Bob didn't just use that as a model. That was the reason he talked to me. You know, the guy in the suit who was doing lobbying and this and that. I mean, he accepted me as a brother in activism, a brother in this battle, and um, and he really did believe in that model and really valued people who did those different tasks. And if somebody didn't want to get arrested or couldn't get arrested, he didn't shame them. He valued the work that they brought to our community. And I hope we can all live up to that and really make everybody, regardless of what work they do in our community, feel accepted and valued, like he did with me and so many others. Um, so I'm very grateful to have known him. I'm going to keep working with the Pitchfork model. He was a founding member of ADA Watch and the Coalition for Disability Rights and Justice. And um, I'd like to think I had some special qualities that made him join our effort, but I think it was because I know it was because Justin Dart was our founding chair, and everybody wanted to be a part of that. And I'm grateful to have had such great leaders who believed in our vision of ADA Watch, and we're back again in action. And again, I want to stick to his pitchfork model, and I'm just grateful to have known him and Steph and Alan and everybody else I met through it, and all of you through this work. So thank you for letting me share my 2 cents here.
Well, thank you. Well, I've got a story to share that's from Jeff Boyer. I gotta grab it out of my email. Thought I had it open. Okay. So this is from Jeff Boyer. Bob Kafka was a great leader with an inclusive, expansive voice. Bob reached out to me for the Rev Up campaign of AAPD, National Campaign for Voter Registration of People with Disabilities. In response to Bob's request, I wrote and recorded Rev Up, copyright September 15th, 2023, https://www.youtube.com/watch?V equals 9EPB SUTNZQ. And I'll put that in the chat. Just today, I wrote Bob a note, not realizing he had passed into spirit yesterday. I already miss you, Bob. Godspeed, brother. You were a great champion and friend. And that's from Jeff Moyer. And I will put that in the chat.
This is Alice. Jim has posted a photo in the chat. He says, sorry, my big head is in this photo, but look at the sweet look on Bob's face as he gazes at my son, Zach, at his first action. And Bob is leaning over. It looks like he's wearing some sort of cap. And Jim, you're looking into the camera holding your baby. That's such a sweet picture. And the baby's got a hat on and looks like it was cold that particular day, some mittens too.
You know, Bob would never call me Jim. It was always Jim Ward. And I didn't know whether I was in trouble or whether he was being loving and friendly. And usually it was some combination of the two, because he always wanted me to be doing something, as I should have been and was trying to. But it was always Jim Ward and a very, very stern hello. And just as an aside, for those of you who don't know my own story, and I know this is about Bob, not me, but I wanted to share because the sweetness of that. Um, when I hit bottom and was hospitalized, I was told I had a broken brain and I should do something less stressful, like work in a 7-Eleven, and that I probably shouldn't have children. And my two sons now are 21 and 22, and it just, I had been doing this work already for a long time, and it just reaffirmed my belief and that nobody should be deprived of their dreams and ambitions because of a real or assigned disability.
So like I just put in the chat the link to my music. If people wanna, if you haven't heard it, it's there. It's on YouTube. It's free. Enjoy or don't, whichever you want.
This is Alice. Thank you for posting that, Alan. And I'm just wondering, I know Sharon is interested in finding the songs as well, but I have to wonder what other people were creating music or art during that period that you and Jim were working with Bob, and uh, where those items might be, or if you have um, collections that you can tell us about so that we can know about them and be able to direct people to them so that they know that you have those things, and if you would be able to share them on some level, photographs, songs, any of that from that time period.
Yeah, I don't think I can do it right now, but I could think about it, and I could certainly make sure that Sharon knows about it, and gets it out to the group or whatever. I think that would be okay. I mean, it really was a British invasion at the beginning. It really was. I mean, it was British artists who were writing songs or creating plays or doing musicals about disability. And when we came to America, that really hadn't started to happen, apart from in comedy. I think there was some good comedy people out there, but I didn't meet many musicians actually. Who were, not, I met loads of musicians, but ones who actually said, "Oh, let me write a song about disability," in a kind of an agitprop or whatever. I mean, Jeff was one of them. Elaine, Kolb was another one, and then Guy Coleman. Those were the three people I kind of met quite a lot. It was nice to hear from you, Jeff. It was really good. Yeah, I need to check that song out. He's still touring. Oscar Jeff Moyer, are you still touring?
Jeff isn't touring. He's got some medical issues going on right now.
Okay, all right. Just tell him I said hi.
So one of the things I'll always remember about Bob and Adapt, which has been somewhat suggested, is I participated in Adapt always with my son, who, when he first started in Adapt, was probably, maybe about 13 years old. And given that he had intellectual disability, the whole concept of being arrested was not something he understood, or even civil disobedience. And so we had sort of carved out a role that was different than sort of the typical Adapt role. And Bob was very respectful of my need to do that. So one of the things that was always done was whenever arrest seemed to be imminent, somebody would always let me know that it was time for Teddy and I to get to safety so that we weren't risking arrest. And it was never pushed on me to be arrested, because it was really not something I could risk with my son. So we were the people who handed out flyers outside of buildings, oftentimes, or a block away, or in the street. So oftentimes we would show up early, get a whole armload of flyers, and that would be our role, be handing out flyers. And it always seemed to be a very respected way to participate when you couldn't be active in other ways. And that was one of the beauties of ADAPT, is that everybody was respected for what they could contribute.
I agree with that. I think that was a part of how that worked. As a person who went to jail in the end many times, I always felt sorry for the people outside, especially in Columbus, where it was snowing and they're waiting outside to see if we can get released. We're inside, me and Bob, quite warm, maybe getting a sandwich. And people outside are just sitting there in freezing cold. So we always respected both groups, those who were in jail and those who were out, because being out of jail didn't mean you went back to the hotel. Being out of jail meant you sometimes all night waiting for the people to get out. So yeah, it was that for me was like building a community, and that's what we did when we took it back to England. And we have lifelong friends, in GAN and in ADAPT, because we shared something, which was really powerful, and it really changed our lives in a way.
One of the first ADAPT action, which was also not dead yet action, that was against Peter Singer in Princeton, and it rained the whole time. We were completely drenched out on the street. So I agree with the idea of being arrested would have been a nice thing in some ways, because being out in the rain was not pleasant.
Yeah, I get that. Totally, yeah.
I got lots of pictures of me under umbrellas in ADAPT action.
I think I still have my Medicaid Matters umbrella somewhere, like from about 2014, 15, something like that. Yeah, they should have sold a lot more then, I'm telling you.
This is Grover. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Your references to, it's almost like the music and it almost seems like there was a bit of theater, like written theater, that was part of ADAPT. Do I make sense? You've made references to music and perform. And I mean, is it safe to say that there is written down dialogue that would be part of a musical skit or something? Am I imagining that?
I think I got most of that. What do you mean by dialogue? I mean, yeah, there were songs early days that I wrote for specific actions,
Yes. Okay. And so they exist in written form somewhere. Is that right?
I think so. Yeah. Don't ask me where. Last time I looked at that, it means I've got 40 songs up there somewhere. So I'm not sure I've actually done met all the access requirements for the actual words to be along with the songs. I should do it and whatever, but I'm getting old, so someone else can do that.
Okay, well, but it is something that I am very interested in, and the reason for that is I am in the process of writing a musical comedy about it's my memoir actually. It's a 3 act play, and the musical uh, is part of it. Lois Curtis being the plaintiff in the Olmsted Supreme Court decision.
I know those.
Lois Curtis, several weeks before Lois Curtis died, back in November of 2022, she dictated 5 songs. And I have taken those songs and actually put musical notation, for the right hand and the left hand. I'm in the process of trying to develop them into, dance music, like samba music. But what I'm saying is, I think in terms of theater. I mean, I'm not a dramatist or a composer, but what you have said, the little bit that you have said in reference to this, really inspires me to see. I'm going to be presenting some of that on Deva's Room on June the 10th. So anyway, thank you very much for mentioning that. I I look forward to perhaps in the future, actually seeing some written copy of what you're speaking of.
Oh, we'll keep in touch, Grover. Keep in touch, and um, well, I can put my address, email address, and then we can.
Very good. Do that. Thank you so much.
Right now, just give me a second. Make sure we're right. It's in the chat now, so that's my email address. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, some songs I wrote for specific things, and some songs I wrote for like more general things, So, and some songs I wrote about me, so that's fine, So, but mostly,
Yes. Okay.
most of my love songs.
Some of the protesting almost became music.
Yeah, it did.
Yes. Has a great history. Just stop it.
I mean, I think when you're on an action, what you have to think about is, well, I'm from England, but you think about soccer songs that are sung in a stadium. I think, what are they singing? If they're singing like "We All Live in the Yellow Submarine" and they're putting their own words,
Yes.
then that's what you do as a group, and you change the words basically. But everyone knows the song, so I mean, me and Anita were doing that all the time, So not just like I mean, not we believe in freedom, cannot rest till Macassar was passed or whatever. So yeah, I mean, and I remember like being in Seattle, right, and I wrote a song about the 10 worst states of for nursing home, occupation, and I put it to Bob Dylan's Maggie's Farm, for instance. So,
Oh, okay.
Because
Wonderful.
people knew that song, it's like, but you could do that with like Country Roads, for instance, Take Me Home to the place where I belong, in my own home, not some nursing home. Take me home, country road. So people can, because they know the song, it's easy for them to join in and get involved in it. Yeah.
So, Alan, about your music, do you have a favorite song?
It always changes, so it just changes all the time. So I think people in England, they like Choices and Rights, And I think in America, they like Tear Down the Walls. I think is that those were the two I think that would other people like.
Yeah, Tear Down the Walls. I think my son knows that one by heart. That one he would put on and rewind and the cassette in the car all the time.
Mhm. Yeah, it drives you nuts, right? As a mum, right? Can't we listen to some Taylor Swift or something, guys? Yeah. No, I mean it's. I wrote "Tear Down the Walls" because I met Wade and we had that discussion, and the next thing you know, when I'm back in England, Wade passed away. You know, he was drowned with his son trying to save his son, and so I was asked to come over for his memorial, and I wrote that song for Wade basically because the last version it says, "This is for all the people who fought and died against the beast." And Wade used to call the nursing homes and the beast, basically. So that was definitely for Wade. And yeah, and to play, coming over to America for the first time at his memorial, although I didn't rehearse it, so that was okay.
This is Alice again. I have a question for everyone in the that wants to comment on it, and I'm just struck by the richness of these stories, some of which I've only heard pieces of. I was not aware that there were actions in Chicago because even though I'm from the suburbs, I was in California when that was happening, and so I didn't know any of that was going on. And I'm wondering how we can get these stories to the younger generation that needs to hear them. And I speak globally from about kids with disabilities, kids without disabilities, that this history is so important, and I'm struggling with how to get it out to the public. I know we have lots of efforts that are happening in museums and people pulling things together, but getting it more broadly into the curriculum like you and Sharon are doing, Alan, and how do we get that information onto bookshelves and into the hands of teachers so that they know this history? And even people in the disability field who don't know these stories, who've never heard of Bob, and not know Justin at all. People know the ADA, but they don't know the history of who wrote it or any of the players. And how do you feel about the best way to get those stories to live longer and be out there in the general public so that everyone knows the stories?
Well, this is off the top of my head, right? This is really because I do believe in, trying to get this history together. I do believe in all of that. But I think the best story I've told tonight is the one about the mule, which happened to be from way blank. But the point about that is there's a lesson in that, if you know what I'm saying. There's a lesson for young people and activists or, whoever. That's how you get attention. First of all, you have to, stop treating this nice and that could go for parents and, young people or anybody. So I think whoever we talk about, it's about getting the attention to the cause and to the history. I think that's more important than, it's important that, like the whole thing about Justin touring every state. That's the story, not about Justin. It's about he went and collected stories, right? And I really do think, that storytelling has a big part to play in our history because I think young students react to that. They know what stories are. They get them all the time from the pop stars and the Taylor Swifts. They know how to deal with the story, which is for younger people, it's a good thing. But I do hope, just to let you know, when I was down in Texas with Jim, I was talking to Steffi quite a lot, Bob's partner, and she's really into the history, and I know that she needs help to preserve the enormous amount of history that's there. I mean, she's got, I mean, if you didn't know Jim, she has got the videos of the newscasts that were there when her dad was doing whatever they were doing. I think she got them from Gordy, and I mean, that stuff's just going to get thrown in the trash at some point unless we kind of begin to preserve it. So I think the first thing is to get this curated basically and get it stored. If just for now it needs to be safe, and then we need to have people who can refer back to it and say, oh, what was that about? I mean, there are some good sites out there. I mean, Adapt has its own site, which is It's Our Story, I think it is. Oh no, it was I Was There. And that's like, that goes way back to even when I started, like, of people talking about their experience and adaptation and what happened. And I think those are great little stories which could become, a lesson plan, Sharon, right? They could have that story and then have their students talking about what do you get from that and what do you learn. So I think that's cool. Oh, I have to go very soon, so I'm just sorry. This is late for me, by the way, folks.
A short video that was done by Ashton, one of the DHACC members, and talks a little bit about DEVA's commitment to continuing to preserve disability studies and disability history. And it also talks about our donations options, which are also on the I Love You Lead On website. So I'll let Sharon go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to DEVA's Room. DEVA's Room is a virtual space open to all, seeking to bring anyone interested in disability studies together in conversation and in solidarity. DEVA's Room is inspired by the life and legacy of Deva Kasnitz and her outstanding contributions to the field of disability studies. DEVA's Room is volunteer-led by members of the Disability History and Culture Collective and the I Love You Lead On community. In a 2023 reflection, Deva wrote of her determination to be more comfortable in study and advocacy and to blend them together to create a diaspora of disability studies best ideas. By holding regular events led by prominent and emerging voices in disability studies, we hope to honor this mission. Deva believed in a fully inclusive world that respected everyone's communication strategies. Inclusive and accessible technology can be costly. You can help support technology expenses for Deva's Room, which will allow us to grow and expand. If you have the resources to contribute to the development and sustainability of Deva's Room, please consider donating by scanning the QR code on your screen or by visiting the link in the chat, donorbox.org/Deva-S-room. Thank you so much for showing up and learning together with us.
Again, helping to make this space accessible, I Love You Lead On community and all of its various projects are volunteer-led. We have a variety of ways you can support our efforts to provide full access. Our work includes the Disability History and Culture Collective, DHACC, this space, Deva's Room, which happens the second Wednesday of every month, Judy's Room, which will not be happening in April because it happens on the first Wednesday of the month, and that happens to be falling during Passover, but it is usually the first Monday of every month on the Mind Freedom and also on on the I Love You Lead On website. Justin's Room and other events on the horizon. We do have an upcoming event next Wednesday, and if you're not on the mailing list, we'll be happy to send this out, where we're going to have our second gathering of museum people, where people who are working in the museum space, the collection space, the stories gathering space. We want to be clear about who we want everyone to come to that. We had our first gathering 2 days before the Christmas holiday, and we had 17 people stay for almost 3 hours. This next session will be similar to that in bringing people together to talk about what they're doing. The Scardi Center has opened their museum. Other people are going to talk about what they're doing, and another sharing space where we can all come together and talk about this continuing, ongoing discovery of collections and who has things and where are they and where can they be stored and preserved. There's a whole technology piece to this archiving I'm just beginning to learn about, and finding a good space and a safe space, and then putting the artifacts and information in places that won't degrade them. There's still a lot of work to be done in this area so that we don't lose these artifacts, like you said, Alan, that they may end up, if people don't know what they have, they may not be kept.
Just one thing, late last year I went to England to look at to work with them on their Disability History Museum in Manchester. And they've done a lot of archiving already. And I'm sure my friend who's kind of not running it, but definitely overseeing it and bringing people in would be happy to come on a meeting so it wasn't, well, 1 o'clock in the morning here. Maybe a Saturday morning would be better for that one. But I mean, they've digitalized a lot of the stuff, so it's now on a computer, so students can go in there and on a search engine and search for, say, Bob Kafka, and there'll be a thing on Bob Kafka there. So I think it is, I mean, I know there's some great stuff going on here as well, but you're right, it does need to be archived. And I'm not an archivist. I'm not. I don't even know the process of doing that, but I think it would be good to know what that process is and, how we can, like you say, preserve it. Maybe not even always in its original form, but at least preserve it digitally,
Well, that sounds great. I know we talked, Sharon and Susan and I talked about that effort that you were doing, and that people in different time zones may not be able to join us Wednesday, but perhaps a separate call, or for the next quarterly meeting, maybe they could do a little video or something we could arrange so that they could participate as well, because I'm sure they can give us information that can guide the process here in the States.
Maybe we have a transatlantic meeting. It actually would be interesting to get a group of British disability advocates and American disability advocates together in the same room.
Yeah, that would be cool. I'll work on that. Okay. Next month, I'll get back to you all. I think mainly about the history stuff. I think that's, I mean, there is a thing called NDACA, which is the National Disability Arts Archive, and they got a lot of money from the National Lottery in England. And so that website is an example of where it could start to go, basically, yeah. Sharon, if you can we find out and at least get it into somebody in the group and find a link. Maybe I can do it right now, just a second, if I've got time.
And I think, this is Alice again, I think that's the whole reason that we started to think about having these quarterly meetings, because there is a lot going on. And we want to be sure that people aren't like duplicating the wheel, and that we're all together talking about who's doing what and what challenges people are finding in this space, like how do you archive and where, where can we have a place to store things collectively, because that's a whole nother piece of funding that I don't know that anybody has at the moment, where they have enough room to store things, place where photographs can come into. Those are all the kinds of things that I know Sharon and I and Susan have talked about under the DHACC umbrella. How do we help in that regard, alongside with the museums that are beginning to open, and people like Jim has a wonderful piece of Lois Curtis's art in the chat. Looks like it's a young, I don't know, it could be a young person. It almost looks like an illustration from a children's book back when I was young, with the soft colors and a very full face with their arms crossed in a gray dress up against a kind of a greenish background. It looks almost like, and I know Grover has talked about her using crayons. It does look like she may have used crayons or colored pencils in this drawing, but it's a lovely drawing, and would be nice to know who has those pieces of art and where they could be archived on some level.
Mhm. Oh, I love that. I love that drawing. That's great. Yeah. Thank you.
I have that one and be glad to, I was thinking, I almost gave it to Basilon because they did so much on Olmsted, but I can't really give it away. I don't think I should. But I think we should get as much of that out as possible. I don't want to spend much time on it now, and I don't want to get ahead of myself, but we've been working on the Amplify platform. I'll follow up with you all about including the history piece on there, because we'd like to have a way of really preserving our history, so that when somebody's responding to an action alert or they're engaged on policy issues, that there'll be a sidebar with our history as it relates to our history. So young people, when they're doing this work, because there's a lot of good influencers and young people who work really hard for our cause. And it would be great to have, as they're doing their work, a sidebar of the history, who really gave us the rights that we have now, who worked on this, who did what, and so that our history isn't lost. But I'll follow up separately on that, and I hope we can work together on that.
Yeah, Jim, call us soon.
And if you're available, please join us next Wednesday. We'll make sure that you get the information either through the Google groups or some way to get that information to you, but it'll be next Wednesday. I don't have the time in front of me. Maybe Susan does. Did we say 7 or 6 to 8? I can't remember. I'd have to pull it up. We do have a Facebook page where we're promoting things, and we also have a LinkedIn page. So you can look up I Love You Lead On both of those platforms right now, and get more information if you're not getting the emails. But if you'd like to put your emails in the chat so that we make sure that you get those emails, if you're not, I'll be happy to add you on.
I'd also like to give a plug for 2 weeks from now, when we have Deva's Room, the second Wednesday next month. And Nancy Weiss is going to be coming, and she's going to be talking about the Judge Rottenberg Center. And she has been instrumental in a number of different programs to stop the shock at Judge Rottenberg, which uses essentially cattle prods to keep children with disabilities regulated in place. It's a supposed school condemned internationally in Massachusetts. And Massachusetts itself as a state sends none of its children there. Most of the children that go to the school come from New York State. But it's universally condemned, except by a number of parents that send their children there, and the U.S. continues to make it lawful to use cattle prods on children to make sure they behave. And Nancy will have lots of information about how this happens and what kind of actions we can take individually or in groups to help stop this.
Sharon's put the link to the Facebook page and the LinkedIn account and next week's event on LinkedIn so that you can see that information as well. Those are all in the chat.
I want to thank everybody who came, either in present of the video or who watches it after the fact. We'd love to hear from you guys. Let us know if you watched it and you appreciated it, what you want to see in the future. We're always thinking about other presentations and who we want to bring on. So if you have an idea of who you'd like to see, or you are a person who'd like to be on, we're certainly open to all kinds of suggestions. So thank you, Alan. It was great having you. I'd like to know your secret because you're not aging a bit.
Don't believe it. Really, don't believe that. Sharon will tell you that I'm aging a lot. So, I work with Sharon every day. So, yeah, man. I mean, she tries to teach me things like, internet stuff, basically. And it's like, what? Do I really need to know this for the rest of my life? So, yeah. But, yeah, thank you. It's been great. It's been a good group. It's nice to talk about Bobby, especially. Nice to meet somebody I haven't seen before. That was great. Keep in touch. You've got my email in the chat, so just drop me a line and we can have a natter, as they say in England.
Thank you. Hope you guys all have a good evening.